Welcome to another session of the Global Entrepreneur Week. I'm super excited to be the one opening the floor as a fellow from the League of the Entrepreneurs. I'm also working at Nova School of Business and Economics in Portugal. And together with our many members, 50 members that we have in the center that I lead, and that has 3 key topics on its research agenda: leadership of the future, new forms of organizing for impact, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm super happy and also proud, to be honest, that in our research agenda, we have topics such as regeneration and a systems change. And so when Danny and Jolana talked about the topics of this year for our Global Entrepreneur Week, it was kind of organic to propose that Ricardo Zozim, one of our members, professor at Nova SBE, could also share the work that we've been doing on systems change methodology. We've also been working together in regeneration. For instance, recently we developed and implemented an accelerator program for projects, startups, social organizations that want to be regenerative recently, and now they're online in a digital showroom called boutique-impact.org, ready to be invested. But we're also doing work and research such as in regenerative tourism, actually applying this methodology that Ricardo today will share with you. And we have other professors also doing research in regenerative tourism in Portugal, coincidentally. And we have many other projects in building. So as a business school, I think this is really important to be proposing not only to academia, but also to practitioners, this bridge between languages, taxonomies, ways of thinking, even mindsets, which are different. And we know we kind of identify to each tribes and we join different tribes, but this space that this week is also proposing of this bridge between intrapreneurship and regeneration is quite beautiful. And to be honest, I think it is very, very impactful because companies are the ones that hold the biggest slice of the GDP. So we need to use companies in this transformation that we see and that we want to share with the world. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the word to Ricardo.
You're on mute, Ricardo.
Hello, good morning, and I am sorry to being on mute, but I've got lots of things to say, so bear with me. I wanted to say a very good welcome to colleagues and practitioners from all over the world that join us. Like Joanna said, we've been working on this initiative for 18 months now. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about the initiative because many lives ago, I started with a couple of colleagues. I started the Institute of Social Entrepreneurship here in Portugal, and what we did was pretty awesome. We created an institute that formed over 10, 15 years, 12, more than 3,000 social agents and entrepreneurs that were going to solve the problems of the world. And we really believed in it. And we dedicated many of our time and effort and commitment to that. And what happens? 12 years later, this organization celebrated 10 years. And as we were reviewing these 10 years of activity of the Social Entrepreneurship Institute here in Portugal, we realized that we had failed. We had not succeeded in our idea of changing the most fundamental problems of Portugal. And one of the reasons, as we were discussing the reasons why we had failed, it was pretty obvious, a number of things. One was that the instruments that we had put to the social entrepreneurs for them to do something, for them to act, were very much about them, about their solution, about the solution they were going to take, about the solution that they were going to bring to the world, about the transformation, about the impact, about them. And what we felt from kind of like reflecting on all of that is that we didn't have collective instruments of action. And then what happened? Out of these 3,000 people, only a couple of them actually succeeded, maybe, 50, 100. Only 50 or 60 of them actually changed the face of the problem, of a problem here in Portugal. So what happened to the remaining 2,900? So this is a question that bugged us a couple of years ago. What are we missing? And out of frustration, one of the things that we understood it was missing were twofold. One was an understanding of the issues that entrepreneurs were trying to tackle as complex, and a collective understanding of this. So all of this brought us to our initiative that I want to introduce to you. I think one of the things that we are particularly more excited about is that we now have some evidence to prove that this could work. And we have some evidence to prove our work with companies and foundations and all of this can actually yield some important results. But before I start sharing our insights and a little bit about our trajectory, I wanted to also to let you know that towards the end, so this is going to take 20, 25 minutes, more or less. And towards the end, there'll be a section where I hope to learn from you. I hope that we learn together in this. So be ready for some input, and also, be ready to ask me questions about this. So without further ado, here we go. So Joanna introduced our LFI, our Leadership for Impact Knowledge Center. Let me just show you a picture of our beautiful campus. Just get this out of the way. So this is our campus, and yes, we're by the water, and yes, we've got a tunnel to the beach, and yes, many of our students are surfers. But being so close to the natural environment, so close to all of this, also brought us a big responsibility towards our community. And I think one of the biggest realizations as we moved to this campus, we moved to this campus 7 years ago, was our responsibility to create a community of talent, but also knowledge that impacts the world. And I believe this is really important as we continue to find ways of making our position in the world an important part of our business school, right? So it's not just about training talent, but it's training talent that has impact in the world. So our initiative is all about that. Just as a side note, we have a tunnel that goes straight into the beach. The tunnel goes from here. The tunnel actually starts here in this place and goes straight to this beach and to a longer beach here. And all the people from this community here, that you can see these buildings, and there's many more behind us, they use our tunnel. Let me put it this way. They use our tunnel. And the reason why we believe that's important is this idea of a community of talent and knowledge that impacts the world. So not just a community of talent. So we're not just forming students so they can go and work. We're forming a place. We're forming a special place here that impacts the world. All right. And yes, so close by the water. So let me tell you a little bit about our initiative. I told you about our frustration, but let me also tell you, um, when we talk to people about many of our things, they tell us about this, right? So they tell us about this idea of impact investing and other things are important, but people don't really believe in them. So not only we are frustrated, but as we talk to many other people, they're also frustrated that good ideas do not yield good results. And I believe that's part of our responsibility is to do that. And one of the reasons why, and we know this, is of course social problems are complex, and they're complex in a number of dimensions. When we talk about this all the time, right? The social problems are complex, but what we see is they're complex in a number of ways. So let's take poverty as an example, right? Poverty is complex because it's multidimensional. Poverty relates and is shaped by educational, social, economic, institutional, cultural aspects. And each of these has a lot of impact on the multidimensionality of poverty. Um, they're also interconnected by a deep structure. So what we see is these dimensions, they are interconnected by structures, power dynamics, legal barriers, political barriers, societal expectations, economic barriers. So once you try linear solutions into a problem that has this configuration, of course, the linear solutions do not yield the results and the transformation that you're looking for. It looks pretty obvious, right? Because the other thing is that linear solutions emphasize the role of multi-stakeholders. So in a sense, I I know what the solution is. And in terms of poverty, we've had a number of governments in Portugal and across the world that hold the answer to poverty. And the way they hold the answer is not by considering the complexity and the time to make change, but it's really about uh, this idea that I, in the government, going to tell everybody else what to do. And then the associations, they're going to tell everybody what to do. The church is going to tell everybody what to do. But actually, no one really knows what to do. And the reason is, of course, this complexity. But how do we deal with this complexity? That's one of the questions that we're trying to answer in our initiative, right? And I think it's important to explain to you how this started, because like many other things in a university, in a business school like ours, this started with a question from the organizations that work with us. So I was with a Blink, which is a small Amsterdam-based, Netherlands-based family office, and I was speaking to the the philanthropist in this family office, and she had a question for me, right? And the question is, Ricardo, I've invested millions of euros in this place in Tanzania, and I cannot see transformation. I cannot really understand the transformation that is happening there. Can you help me to measure the transformational impact of the millions of euros of dollars that I've invested in this place, but more importantly, in other projects all over the world? So this is an interesting question. It was a difficult question. The impact frameworks that existed did not count for this. So we basically, with their help, we interviewed everybody in that organization that had anything to do with impact. And what we found was that they were really committed to their mission. They were professional people. They had frameworks. But But what they didn't have was an understanding of the complexity of what they were trying to achieve in this place in Tanzania. And they had ideas on doing regenerative tourism projects and sustainable agricultural projects. They had patient capital, so they were, kind of, uh, uh, um, they were good to the projects. They were committed. They were, all of the things that we thought were important to this type of projects they had. What they didn't have was an understanding of the complexity. So that's what we gave them, right? So we said, okay, if you were doing investments in projects and in funds and in companies and all of this that you're doing, how do you know if it's going to bring the transformation? How do you know it's going to bring the impact that you want? So we did this. We basically organized. So in blue here, anonymized, you see that this is all the projects that they had, all the investments that they had done. And we created a dashboard where it told them if this was aligned with systems change or not. So in dark purple, you'll see the dimensions that we observed in the projects that were totally aligned with systems change. And in light color here, you would see the dimensions that were not aligned with systems change. So basically, we built a dashboard based both on the literature on systems change and investments on system change and the interviews with them. And we built all of these dimensions that you see here on top. Let me show you that you see here on top. And we created a dashboard that basically told them that this investment was actually negatively aligned with systems change. So it was not provoking any transformation. It was actually reversing transformation. And we basically told them that some of these investments were not having the effect that they expected. We also told them, which was interesting, the areas where we felt they could do better. So they could transform the way they were investing. So they could transform the way it meant sense for them to invest. So this is the beginning of our project, right? So we went from one project that had a linear to systemic approach. So they had a linear approach, and we explained how a systemic approach could work for them. We went from isolated projects to a connected portfolio where they could have a portfolio vision of what was happening to them. And the best of all, of course, we went from silos. So when we interviewed them, they were working, all of them in their project, were all of them in there to a systemic vision of impact. And we basically changed this organization, changed their vision of what an organization looks like, changed a lot of things in this organization. So we got excited about this, first of all. You know, you're like me, you're also entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. And, when we are successful about something that we've been frustrated about, we got very excited about. And we basically did a shift, right? So we kind of like said, okay, what if we took this money that they were paying us and kind of built an initiative that would make more sense, right? Build an initiative that would give this to other organizations. So this is what we did. We created an initiative with three purposes: education, research, and collaboration. So although we were very happy because part of this had been grounded on extensive literature and extensive literature review, as we're academics, so we had to ensure that all of these dimensions, they had a solid scientific basis, not just an empirical base, but scientific basis. And we also interviewed people, and we also read more than all of these projects. They had impact reports, so we read all of those. So we basically were working with theoretical knowledge and empirical knowledge and the interviews. So I think we were pretty academic approaching this, But we understood that this could not just be an education project. So we could not just use this to help our students to perform better. This could also not be just a research project. We actually wrote a case study, and we wrote in a Stanford Social Innovation Review about this, and you can see that paper, and apologies for the show off. But this had to be a collaboration exercise. So we went from one project to an initiative to a formula. How could we make this happen in other organizations? How could we understand this from another types of organizations? So we were now all excited. We had the cash, so we basically started doing this, right? So okay, so what did we change in this organization? First of all, we reflected, right? So first, what we changed was this idea of embracing complexity. So no longer they were refusing to accept the complexity of their intervention. They were pretty much accepting it, embracing complexity. The second thing we did, of course, was to map out complexity. So when we created that dashboard, not only complexity emerged, but complexity became visible to all of them. So now they were not just going for linear solutions in some of those dimensions, but they understood that they had to perform in multiple dimensions, that for sure had deep structures, and for sure had other types of actors involved. And of course, we had to help them navigate the complexity. We had to help them practice. So not only this was a project about changing their mindset, helping them to understand with tools and frameworks that would help them, but also, how, once they have this dashboard, what do they do? And one of the things that we did, of course, let me just go back here in the slide, was to help them specific goals for these areas here that were light, and, help them to change some of these projects where their score was very low. So this is kind of a formula. So we went from a project to an initiative to a formula. And as we are academics, right? We began, creating more on this formula and applying this formula to other types of problems. So okay, we started to codify our formula. We then did thesis and executive education. So we trained people. We created maps for a number of problems that people came to us with, and I'm going to give you an example in a second. And we helped organizations to think about this. So what did we do in practice? Um, we, as we were discussing this, we applied this to 5 different domains where our vision of systemic impact and our formula could work. One was, of course, impact investment, and we're now doing a big study on regenerative tourism. The second, of course, was societal challenges. Okay, so how could we map out the systemic design, the system that underpins specific societal challenges? And I'm going to give you an example in a second. The other was, of course, learning academies. As we are a university, one of the problems people gave us was, okay, Ricardo, I send people out to training, and then, so that costs me a fortune because I have to send them out to training, executive training, so training for adults, training for executives. How could you help me to understand the transformation that this training is actually having, the impact that this is actually having? And we did this for one of the largest retailers, the largest retailer in Portugal. The other thing that we did, of course, was to create a way of going further with our methodology and monetizing impact. So we were not just mapping out the impact. So mapping out was easy, this bit here. We were kind of saying, okay, So if we were to change the system, how does that translate to cash? How does that translate to a better cash position? Because we're from a business school, right? So in a business school, we have to include the issue of cash at some point. And finally, we have a proposal at the moment with one of the largest producers of cork to use our systems formula to map out their supply chain and the risk of their supply chain. So this is kind of like we had a project that turned into an initiative that turned into a formula, and these are the multiple applications of that formula. So maybe I'll stop you for a second because I need a glass. I need to sip a little bit of my water. But I wonder if you have any questions, or do you have any things that you want to share with me, or do you have any anything that you want to ask? And if that's okay, team.
Yes, of course.
Oh, you're still shy. Or maybe I'm just going too fast and you've lost me 5 slides ago.
How is this regenerative?
Who's asking?
Me.
I don't know who's me. Sorry.
Bonnie Chopin.
Hello, Vinny.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I just I didn't see it, Vinny. How is this regenerative? So one of the projects that we're doing now here in Societal Challenges, we're studying the low rate of regenerative tourism. So the low rates of regenerative tourism. So that's how we are including regeneration and regenerative tourism in this project. But if you have any advice, I would love to learn from you.
Well, I'm part of the zoo operation adventure in the Netherlands, and it's about being regenerative as a business. So also a school could be regenerative. So that's why I'm asking. Yeah. I'm curious if you have thought of yourself being regenerative, your whole organization as well. And what would that look like?
Gosh, that's an important question. No, in all honesty, no. Yes and no, maybe.
We can talk about it later.
No.
I'm
One
curious
of the things,
about
let me, but
yeah.
I want to answer. One of the things with our projects that are pretty much standard, and we've had situations with difficult clients, let's put it this way, is that part of what we do, we must offer to the world. So we must, so imagine you're client A, you're paying us to do something, and one of the conditions of working with us is that part of what we do must be offered to the world. And one of the decisions we have to do is which part, right? So which parts, and if they're very commercial and they don't really allow us to offer some of these to the world, then we kind of refuse to do it. So we had a situation with an insurance company where we said, okay, so we can map out your areas of intervention, of social responsibility intervention, and we can map out the development of the systems that you're trying to impact. And they go, yeah. But Ricardo, what if you and your team find out that we've been doing, things that do not have impact? And we go, yeah, that's also part of the map. They go, nah. I don't want to show the world that I've been doing this, but the effect is the opposite, right? So maybe we're not the right partner to you, because you cannot, it's a map. You cannot hide parts of the map because it's just not convenient, right? It's an opportunity to learn. So that's how I'm trying to be regenerative. Maybe it's a long answer to answer.
I can add to your reply, Ricardo, and to your question, Bonnie, because I do believe this is regenerative in a way that if you understand regeneration as creating the conditions for all life to thrive, and then this is an approach that is showing organizations and projects as living systems, that are interconnected, that you need collaboration, that we need to reimagine our system, we need to change the way we think, the way we approach life. So this is an invitation to see that align with business and align with ideas and projects. And so it's like helping the system to go from that linear way of being to a more interconnected and systemic, by showing these type of
Absolutely,
maps
absolutely.
and just like
So-
going deeper in what is a societal challenge and what are the real implications, impact, and results of that, and integrating, as Ricardo was saying, all the vision, not just the nice part of it. So I do believe this is regenerative in a way that is supporting that transition to a system that creates the condition for all life to thrive, instead of just doing good, to some
Yes, yes.
in that.
Yeah.
some
That's why I'm here. I'm very interested. I think as a ZOOP, we have organizations that are trying this model to be a zooperation, cooperation with all life instead of human-centered. So maybe the second part, societal challenges, I would include all life, not only humans. That's what I would do. But
Absolutely. We just
But-
had Joanna, how 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we just had a meeting with some of our colleagues from biology and regeneration, talking about living systems, how the next stage of what we're trying to do is living systems. But as you can, and I'm being transparent here, as you know, the relationship between companies and nature is emerging at the moment for many of the companies that we work
especially big ones, yeah.
with. Yes, yeah. All right, so maybe I'll show you one example, and then Joanna, we can do the breakout rooms. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
Ricardo, I was also going to suggest that you would
Yes.
show the different maps within the
Yes.
methodology. You haven't shown them, right? I think.
No, I'm going to show one.
Because I think that when we understand these different maps, then also Bonnie's question will be in a part enlightened. So from my opinion, we cannot say that systems change methodology is regenerative per se. I think it's one of the pieces that can allow us maybe then later on to think about how could we imagine in allocating different resources in a more strategic way in collaboration with others. And so creating space for actually a big potential to emerge and for projects to be more regenerative. But actually we're going deep into the problems and the complexity and the interconnectedness, but it's something that we usually don't do. So I think this relationship, as Danny was saying, about we need to understand this nestedness and this confusion, but we need to have first a clear picture, and this is what this methodology brings to us.
Yeah, so maybe let me show you how this happens in practice, okay? And then I'll give you an example. The first thing that we do, I don't think without surprise, is we understand the multiple dimensions of a certain question or a certain phenomenon. Our methodology works really well with questions because we're trying to understand the relationship between variables. So it works really well with questions. So the first step is really to understand the key questions and the key dimensions, the multiple dimensions that work in a certain space, a certain domain, a certain question. And to do that, we organize in the iceberg model. The iceberg model is a linear tool, but that allows us to basically organize the multiple dimensions in a way that helps us to gain granularity on the dimensions. So we typically build a big database of dimensions, all from a literature perspective and we back up all of this with studies, so we know exactly what drives what and which study says that this drives what. And we built the iceberg model, considering, of course, the phenomena that we're studying and the key questions, the patterns that are associated with that phenomena, the structures that are underlying and motivating these patterns, and of course, the mental models. Once we do that, that also means that we have a certain detail and nuanced understanding of the issue. We then start creating uh, causal loop diagrams, where basically we visualize the interrelationship between these variables and these multiple dimensions. And here we create two things. One is the feedback loops. So which variables are linked to which dimensions. And we also understand, because of their importance in the system, an important dimension of thinking in systems, which is leverage points. Leverage points are the points in the system where an intervention is more likely to bring beneficial impact, not detrimental impact. So by building these maps here, we create, not only we understand feedback loops, so we organize complexity, we help organizations that work with us to understand the areas of intervention, and then we work on the leverage points. So once we have this map, this is typically a very comprehensive map, we do the next stage. And I think we're particularly excited about this in our methodology, is that we take these maps and we apply a stakeholder and solutions landscape perspective. So basically, we identify the stakeholders already working on the system and what are they doing in terms of trying to affect the system. And the result is these maps here, the green, red, and yellow traffic light system that basically tells us, in here, there are already stakeholders that are working to solve this loop. So we don't really need to put any emphasis here, because the system is, to use a very loose word, or to use the word very loosely, regenerating itself with the interventions already there. In yellow, what we have is we can see that there are interventions in the map, but we do not really see any change. So typically, these interventions need to be strengthened, need to be modified. And in red, what we observe is gaps where we don't see stakeholders attacking or tackling those loops. So what this offers is a perspective of what's happening. Not only, so this maps out the system, this maps out the dynamism of the system. So if I am a player in the system, an important stakeholder in the system, and I want to change something, I now have two really important pieces of information. The map with the leverage points, but also what's already happening here. And this is, of course, part of our formula, which is, embrace complexity, understand and map out complexity, and then allow organizations to do specific projects for systemic change. And this is what we did with the Cofidis. And let me explain this to you. So Cofidis was a project where we studied, and apologies for the real slide. We studied the low financial literacy levels across Europe, across the countries where Cofidis was operating. And we began by understanding the financial literacy dimensions. And then we created causal loop diagrams where we understood the vicious cycles and the intervention areas. But of course, what we also did was We read reports, we accessed databases, we had focus groups, we had interviews to experts to explain the system and to uh, uh, we explained the system, what we were observing in the system to them, and they explained what they knew about the system to us, so that we had a finer and a better picture of our maps, of our causal loop diagrams. Just to give you an idea, in this project, we accessed more than 300 sources of data, with many studies across Europe and all of that. So now that we had an understanding of the vicious cycles and the intervention areas, we then had to, of course, individualize this for each of the countries, right? So this is what we then did, was to create specific maps for each of the countries where we emphasize some of the loops that were specific to that country and some of the leverage points that we were observing. And of course, then we did the same thing where we mapped out not only the important loops, but also the stakeholders and solutions landscape. So what we did here was, okay, Cofidis, if you wanted to develop the financial health of the system, this is the current state of the system, and this is the current state of the system per country. And then, of course, what we created was a global perspective for them and a global strategic actions for them. So this is to give you an idea of how we took a problem from an organization and detailed all of these into our maps. Of course, I have many other slides, but I think I should stop here now, just because of time. And Joanna, if you can help me with the questions again, because I cannot see those two questions that we would love people to answer in breakout groups. The idea now is, maybe I'll stop you for a second, see if people have questions, and then we'll ask you to go to breakout rooms for 15 minutes or so to answer two very simple questions, right, Joanna? What's question number one?
Yes, so I'm sharing also in the chat to make it easier for you to use in the groups the two questions in a PowerPoint if you want to fill it in. As Ricardo was saying in the beginning, one of the goals when we do also these sessions is to learn from people, right? We're, of course, advocates of this methodology, but we know many of you are also working in the space of systems change. And so the two questions also want to kind of harvest the knowledge and the collective knowledge when you're also in discussion. So the first one is, what interventions with a systems change methodology do you know? So this is something that for us is continuously a search. We have different people talking about systems change, maybe even fewer people talking about mapping this complexity, but we would be happy to know from you, what do you already know? And the second one is, which barriers to apply a systems change approach do you feel that exist, either in your organization or in experiences that you have had with other partners, but a bit also discussing on which barriers do you see.
So welcome back. I just wanted to hear from the groups, comments, questions. So it was quite interesting as you were discussing in the groups. Some people joined in slightly late, and one of the questions I was asking them is, do they have any connection with systems, or they were just learning? And so, could you tell me about your connection with systems? Could you teach the group something? That would be great. Maybe we start with room one, right? So room one had Alex, Bonnie, Karina, and Elena.
I can take the first wordings concerning our approach on the discussion and answer of these two questions. We have taken your slide, your main slide, concerning the system mapping to make complexity more tangible. And we agree all that somehow in addressing the challenge ahead concerning the risk and uncertainty, iceberg model is somehow used in common sense, and also the map 2 in terms of causal loop diagram, where we can already tackle some risks that are interconnected, and also the map 3 concern the stakeholder and solution landscape, where we already see somehow the key players working on some big challenge for the humanity, people, planet, or other subject as climate risk, demographic risk, or other geopolitical risk. But somehow we identify some issue or some barriers, some problem. So this is the second question of Joana Castro slide, related to some political barriers or organizational barriers. And here I pass the floor to Bonnie and to my other colleagues that can explain on their use case or case study where they face on the day-to-day basis these barriers concerning the integrating approach in terms of system change within the communities they are working on. Bonnie?
Yeah, maybe a little introduction for the context, because I'm already working with this kind of system approach with a new institute in Rotterdam, which is institute that developed this zoo operation. You can find it at zoop.earth. It's really interesting, and for me it makes so much sense because they take the living earth into account. That's the biggest ecosystem, right? And we are part of that ecosystem, and economy and everything we do should be in that ecosystem. And that's what I miss in your slides. And a lot of the things I hear and see are a little bit, for me, old school or old system. What we are trying to do with the operations is just a made-up word, cooperation, and zoop means in Greek means all of life, all entities of all living entities, the living earth. So zooperation is a cooperation with everything that lives. And then we do the same, we do the sensing, characterizing. So we have also these kind of tools, but they are always connected to, okay, the questions behind is always, how does that impact the living earth? Because these are all businesses that come to us with wanting to practice with this model, that want to become regenerative. So we have a zoonomic year cycle, and then it's an iterative process, and then together we learn and we experience because nobody knows, because nobody has thought that way before. So you have speaker for the livings that are appointed to them and that help them, and we have a zoonomic very wise men and women that can help with very different things, because this is for me, this is what needs to happen. Because I understand what you do, I understand you are a school, but I miss really life into your slides. Where is life? I only see humans, and we need to change that mindset, because otherwise we can work forever on poverty or whatever. But I hear also Joanna say the term resources. Resources is the extraction of something that is from the earth. If we don't see it, of course we can use things, but we have to learn how to give back, or to make processes better, or to regenerate the land. Not only take, also give. All these things, I think that would be fantastic. Your formula and all these tools that you have, that would be fantastic if we could put that with the zoonomic ideas, let's say. That's what I miss.
Absolutely, and thank you for pointing that out to us. In all honesty, you're totally right, and journeys are always part of the companions that you have in these journeys, right? And you've got a certain type of companions, and I've got a certain type of companions, and I'm reacting to my companions.
Hmm.
But absolutely, I think you're totally right. I think we need to bring that earth element. We did a few experiments with there's an app that you can complexify the maps a lot, and we did a Kubo, I think it's called. I'm sorry, my name escapes me. But I think it's cool. But what we find is that it's such a thin line between a complexity that they can understand in one page and then the Kubu complexity that it's kind of like we map out everything and all the stakeholders and everything, and then all of a sudden they zoom out. They cannot, it's just too much. We've just gone too far.
No, but that's not about that.
And no, but it's because when we try to bring the natural element, is how do we do it? For me, the big question, and maybe I need to liaise with you independently.
Yeah.
How do we do it? How do we do it
Yeah.
without adding a layer of complexity to the map that a business person that is already dealing with a lot in their mind cannot then read it? And then we lose step number 2 of our formula, which is they embrace complexity and then they can map it, right? So
No,
they
you
can
cannot do that with regular customers, regular clients of yours. You won't be able. You need. We have now a lot of organizations in Holland, but also now in Europe are knocking at our door, want to practice with our system, with our ID. And it doesn't look complex. It doesn't look complex. So we have to
Yes.
link
So
another
let's
time.
liaise and then see to get this
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So that's group number 1. Thank you, group number 1, for that provocation, and I think absolutely on the right direction. Room 2, Danny, Ugo, Joanna, Maggie, and Rita.
Yeah, I'll start and invite others to bring in their contribution. It was mainly Hugo and myself who were then, Joanna and had come to kind of give us the questions. And I must say, for the first question, the examples we could think of with Hugo were actually circularity examples. So we were not really conversant with a proper systems approach that had been applied to work that we were doing or had been exposed to. It was more circular economy, which does encompass some level, but I'm not sure it's as comprehensive. And then for the second question, part of the challenge that we had, and I'll express the ones that I voiced, is what you also just said, Ricardo, it can be quite complex. Yeah, so even in the example of the examples we gave, I don't think there was a deliberate, let's sit and look at it in a systems way. It was, okay, let's apply circularity principles in this. And so the complexity that comes with it or appears to come with it, there could be better ways of doing it that is not just as complex. And then the fact that you need different actors, and sometimes you're seeing it only from one perspective. So sometimes not having the vision to see that there are different ways that this could be perceived. So the different actors that are needed, and they're willing to come together. These different actors, once one identifies them, and then finding the leverage point, which is a point that will really make, move the needle. Thank you.
Good. So aligned mostly with what we were saying, and again, there's a thin line between how much from our experiences, but I should highlight that from our experience, is a thin line between how much we can share with. There is a comment here on the chat about a very good comment on the chat about the capitals, right, from Sanford. And Sandra, Danny, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that before we go to the final room?
Yeah, it's hi, Ricardo.
Hello.
So this is one of the frameworks that we use when working with a place, a project, we always start by looking at place and relating also with Bonnie what was bringing. And for us, this in order to map what we call this and develop a relational field and what we call the stakeholder gilding is bringing the different capitals into the room, and nature is one of them. So what we are doing and what is the process that's being developed there also impacts nature, and it can be at different levels. So it's giving a step back is about understanding the place and what is the system, the nestedness of the system that we are working on. And so from there, we can also reconcile natural resources, impact that we are having, and so bring some kind of balance. I don't know, Danny, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. I was really thinking of the same, and that the diagram they use for the 5 type of capital is a star, so it's not 5 bubbles. It's interconnected. So all the capitals are related, and expanding the concept that capital is not only financial. And by this perspective, also is understanding that it's creating relationships, it's the reciprocal symbiotic relationship between the project or the organization and the capitals that interact with that project and interaction. So is this word of reconciling also what was coming into my mind with Bonnie's point. It's like, I don't feel like it should be complex, but it shouldn't be complicated. I think there's 2 different words, and it should be complex because living systems are complex. And it's about embracing that complexity, but not making it complicated. So this reconciling is like, I feel is vital, of reconciling all of these different capitals, that combine, make a living being and make it sustain and thrive, in that way. So that's why I feel it's also important that it's not also 5 capitals in a bubble with the organization in the center, but a star. So yeah, just adding to the conversation.
Thank you.
And you're absolutely right. The challenge that I have is the following. Companies, when they get to me, when they get to us, excuse me, they think they're in the center. And if the first thing that you tell them is that, I'm really sorry, you're not in the center, you just lost them. So the question is, okay, you're in the center, but you're not alone. Okay. It's a big change. And you're not in the center. Nah. Meet them where they are. Absolutely, Danny. So when I speak to companies, you're absolutely in the center of this. You're going to be part of the solution. The only little problem is that you're not alone. And this is where the conversation really starts. Because if you're not alone, who's with me, Ricardo? Who's against me, Ricardo? That's why I need the systems. And most of the people that I meet that want to do this, they've got the right morals in their heart, in their mind, but it's just they've been thinking about the company as something that's more powerful than others for a long time. So thank you for that. I truly like that. Right, room 3, and off we go. We're getting close to the end. So room 3 was Katerina, Yolana, Kunali, and Sandra.
Sandra, do you want to sum us up? Okay.
I already spoke now. You can go.
All right. Well, thank you. So I suppose in our group, we've sort of touched on, again, the complexity and threats of what has already been said as well. And the complexity is sort of posing a difficulty to imagine what this methodology would look like in practice. So we spent some time on that and sort of went into working on how to imagine it in practice and in a real world out there in the work. And we found some examples and kind of satisfied that need to seeing it in practice. And then when we moved on to the second question, I suppose the thread of that conversation would best be summed up by the abstractness of what systems change is. And I suppose it sort of links to the conversation now around, needing to add the wholeness of the approach, and bring in the earth and the life in there as well. And and just sort of and the fact of at the end of the day, we have to sort of help organizations, help leaders to understand how this work could also benefit them, because that's where they are. And so, yeah, just we kind of just touched upon that a little.
Good. Absolutely. And as a business school, we're very concerned about that our message goes beyond what we believe, that our message is embedded in people's transformation, because there's, I don't know, 15 of us here, but there's a lot of change and transformation that needs doing in this world. So let me close with, if there's no questions or maybe a provocation, or let me close with 2 slides of something that we've been working throughout this year, and it's quite stuck at the moment, and I'm slightly frustrated by that. And I want to share my frustration with you and see if you can help us. Can you see my screen? Is that, yeah?
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. So this is the final slide.
Now we can see. Perfect.
You can see that, right? Yeah. So one of the things that have been bugging us since we started this 18 months ago, as I was sharing, was this idea of democratization, right? So we're a business school. We're maybe I would say this in an elegant way. We're conscious that we're expensive, and not all people can work with our tools. And how do we are truthful to ourselves in a way that we are truthful to ourselves in a way that we offer what we have to the world, rather than just keeping it to ourselves, really. So we've been playing around with this idea of a GPT or a AI for systems change, or something that allows people to work with AI to build part of these maps. Because the big cost is, of course, in what we're doing is not changing the mindset, but the big cost is, of course, in mapping out the variables, those maps that I reflected, right? So we've got this ambition, and and if you connect with us in this ambition, please come and tell us that you're in, and we're organizing ourselves for a better 2026 on this one. We started with a strong 2025, and then we got distracted doing projects for many, as you can see, for many clients, and but this is a firm ambition for 2026, which is to create some kind of open source AI platform that allows people to map out at least the first layer, or the first couple of layers of complexity without, based on totally on AI. If this was possible, that also meant that if I am in the south of Portugal and I cannot pay because my rural organization cannot pay the fees of Nova, but I can maybe watch a few videos online, then map out the issue that I'm looking at in my community, and kind of fine tune the agent so that it helps us to develop that. And in that way, I could create maps that are impactful, but also connected to people with a very low cost. So we're looking for partners, for donors, for philanthropists, for that would be interested in this. So if you're interested in creating something like this with us, please reach out. If you know of an industrialist, if you know of a philanthropic organization that can help us, please reach out to us. If you want to be part of this transformation, please reach out to us. So those were my final 2 slides of pledge. I'll stop sharing now, and perhaps I'll change this so that we can all see each other. Not sure if we can all see each other, but I think we can, right? So thank you very much for attending our contribution to this big event, global event. And I'll see you soon. If you're ever in Lisbon and you want to do some surfing, or if you're ever in Lisbon and you want to come and visit and have coffee with us, please do come. And for the Portuguese in the audience, if you've not been to Nova, or if next time you're in Nova, please reach out. I'll be happy to, Joanne and I will be happy to host you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you,
Thank
Ricardo.
you.